For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
Welcome to the Gist on Strat News Global. Good evening and welcome to another edition of the Gist on Strat News Global. We have $1 million question for you. Could the Bay of Bengal be the center of a new geopolitical contestation between India and China? I have a small map for you. Looking further east towards Thailand, there are ambitious plans for a 90-kilometer road and rail link connecting across the Isthmus of Kra, a narrow strip of land in Thailand. And this will link up the Gulf of Thailand with the Andaman Sea. The link could cost as much as $30 billion to build. And when completed, it will be able to save a lot of time and money for ships otherwise navigating through the Straits of Malacca. So what exactly are we looking at here? I have with me Ambassador Vijay Gokhale, former Foreign Secretary, to answer some of these questions. Sir, welcome. Good to have you.
Thank you very much.
Sir, I saw your recent article in the Express about the Isthmus of Kra and China's plans there. Exactly what is happening? I mean, I understand the government of Thailand has made a proposal to this effect.
Yes, well, Surya, this is an old idea.
Yeah,
as far back as the 18th and 19th centuries, the French actually did explore the possibility of building some sort of a transit artery across the Isthmus of Kra. But once the British Empire came to dominate that part of the world, and once both the port of Malacca and the port of Singapore were under British control, as well as the port of Hong Kong, then the Malacca Straits became the principal trade route between the northern Indian Ocean and the western Pacific. And the idea of a transit artery across the Isthmus of Kra died a natural death. This idea has now been revived again. And it has been revived officially by the government of Thailand, because the Prime Minister of Thailand has spoken about this at two recent international summits in Beijing and in San Francisco. Therefore, I think we need to take this idea more seriously, since it is now coming from the head of government of the country in which the Isthmus of Kra is geographically located.
So is this a Chinese idea planted in the Thai mind?
Well, the idea itself, as I explained, originated much earlier. And of course, there are clear benefits for Thailand if such a transit artery is built, because it will make Thailand a central player then in the Indo-Pacific, because all movement of traffic between the northern Indian Ocean and the western Pacific could be routed through this transit artery. Now, as to who is behind this idea, that is a more speculative exercise. But it is a fact that China or Chinese strategic experts have written about a transit artery through the Isthmus of Kra in their writings. Now, of course, many of these writings by Chinese experts and strategists talk of building a canal which connects the Andaman Sea to the Gulf of Thailand. The current proposal made by the Thai Prime Minister is a scaled-down version, in that it is not the proposal to build a canal, but to build a road and rail link. Now, this is a little more cumbersome because it will mean that you have to disembark the containers at one end, transport it by road and rail to the other end of the canal, and then to reload it on the ships again. But despite this somewhat cumbersome procedure, it has both economic and geostrategic implications for China. And therefore, one has to presume that even if China may not be actively behind the latest proposal, it is certainly supportive of the idea.
So does that suggest they're willing to fund it? $30 billion of it?
Well, I think we should by now be clear that China has demonstrated both the political will and the deep pockets to finance such projects. I mean, let us remember that they have built 18,000 kilometers of high-speed rail in just 15 years. They have also built the railway line to Lhasa, which is the highest railway line in the world in extremely challenging geographic and climatic conditions. And their investments in Belt and Road projects across the world certainly are much greater than 30 billion. So I would say that it is both technologically feasible and financially possible for China to be the principal financier and builder of this project. It is another matter whether geopolitically and geostrategically others will permit that to happen. But we have to presume that were China to take on this project, it is not either technically or financially unfeasible.
So let's look at China's strategic compulsions here. If they have an alternative to the Malacca Strait, it's a great boost for them, isn't it?
Undoubtedly so. Now, of course, we must remember this is not the only effort they have made to circumvent the Malacca dilemma. The Malacca dilemma is a real dilemma for them because if you look at it from any direction, raw material imports, energy imports, and export of Chinese goods, the Malacca Strait becomes crucial for the Chinese economy. And the concern that a country or a group of countries may wish to blockade the Malacca Straits is therefore quite obviously a strategic dilemma for the Chinese. Now, of course, China has tried various ways to circumvent the Malacca dilemma. This includes the railroad through Central Asia to Europe. It also includes the China-Pakistan economic corridor and the China-Myanmar economic corridor, both of which are land corridors that open out into the Arabian Sea and the Bay of Bengal and therefore circumvent the Malacca Strait. But I think that where the two corridors to Pakistan and Myanmar are concerned, there is geopolitical instability in both regions which reduces the certainty factor in both cases. Yes. We are seeing what is happening right now on the Myanmar-China border. And of course, Pakistan itself is an unstable entity. Therefore, I think the Isthmus of Kra provides, firstly, a certainty because Thailand is a stable state with which China enjoys good relations. And secondly, because a lot of the sea routes can be controlled by the Chinese better than territory inside Pakistan or Myanmar, which is unstable. Therefore, I think it makes good strategic sense for the Chinese to look at the Isthmus of Kra project.
From your article, sir, you mentioned that there are ports that China is building, whether in Cambodia or what it has already built in Hambantota or Gwadar, that will in fact assist its strategic designs.
You see, Surya, it's like this. The Isthmus of Kra is just a transit artery.
Yeah.
You also need to ensure that you control ports and port infrastructure on both sides of that artery so that transshipments can be made easily and you are in control of that process, as well as security on both sides of the artery to guarantee that the merchant fleets that you have and the cargoes that move to and from China are secure. For both these purposes, the port at Hambantota in particular, but also the port at Kyauk Phu in Myanmar are important. Because if China controls transshipment points at both ends of the Isthmus of Kra, as well as it can guarantee the security of transit or the security of the sea lanes of communication, it then makes it much more secure for China to depend upon this artery. And it reduces their vulnerabilities which are currently there where the Malacca Strait is concerned. For this reason, ports like Hambantota and Kyauk Phu become important. Now, of course, in addition to it, it is also a fact that China is building special economic zones in both these ports, where presumably Chinese companies will be able to relocate. And once they manufacture in these two or three zones, they can also export their product much more easily and much more competitively to East Africa, let's say, or to the Gulf, or even to Europe. So the entire chain involves, of course, building the Isthmus of Kra, but also of port infrastructure in the Bay of Bengal and in the Gulf of Thailand. And I think this is what we are seeing now playing out in Hambantota. If you saw the news last week, I think the Chinese have also just got the green signal to build petroleum facilities in Hambantota.
Yeah.
And that again suggests to me that they are preparing to build a major transshipment point at Hambantota, which could very well feed into the whole Isthmus of Kra project.
Mm-hmm. And they also have a port that they are building in Cambodia?
Well, the reports are that they are building a naval base in Cambodia. And the recent satellite imagery, which is publicly available, suggests that both the jetty and the facilities that are being seen at the port of Ream in Cambodia are large enough to accommodate significant naval warships. China and Cambodia have, of course, both continued to deny that Ream is a military base. But we must recall that China made a similar denial where the Djibouti base was concerned until they unveiled the Djibouti base in 2017. And there is no reason to disbelieve satellite imagery as well as reports coming out of the United States strategic community that the second naval base is coming up at Ream. It also makes perfect sense because Ream then allows them to control all shipping in the Gulf of Thailand and in the South China Sea. And therefore, in a sense, it helps China break out of the second island chain, which was built by the United States, the first and second island chain, to keep the Chinese Navy hemmed inside the inland waters of the Western Pacific.
So tell me, assuming this road and rail link goes forward, I'm assuming with a lot of Chinese funding, does it make the Chinese any more secure given that the Indian Navy also operates in the Andamans and has a strong presence there?
Well, let me put it this way, Surya. I think the Chinese priority at this point is to ensure that they are not disadvantaged in global competition vis-a-vis the United States.
Okay.
India is a secondary concern, and they are well aware that India has a naval base in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, but they also recognize that India and China have similar objectives when it comes to freedom of navigation and open trade. And one of the points I mentioned in my piece for the Times of India is that we too need to see the positive factors that might emerge for us in terms of development of our eastern seaboard if the Kra Canal project or the Kra Transit Artery project materializes. Because in effect, we advantage the states of West Bengal, Odisha, Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu. And given the fact that several of these states historically have had significant trade with Southeast Asia and beyond, this opens a whole new game for us as well. So we should not assume that we are pitted against the Chinese in a zero-sum game. There are strategic concerns if the Kra Canal opens or the Kra artery opens and if China gets control of it. But if we can ensure that it remains out of geopolitical competition, we have significant advantages to gain from it as well. And therefore, one of the points I did make was that our own development of economic and port facilities in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands should in some way be synced with this project so that it is complementary to and not competitive with the Kra project, and that itself will bring us significant advantage.
So this transshipment thing that we are planning in the Andamans, you're saying that this should be synced with what could possibly happen in the Isthmus of Kra?
Yes, because the port that we are developing, the container ports that we are developing in the Andaman Nicobar Islands, I'm not sure whether the work has begun, but it is certainly planned. And the possible development of the deep sea port on the Andaman side of the Isthmus of Kra is only 500 nautical miles apart. And therefore, you don't, in a sense, if the port on the Isthmus of Kra is highly developed, you may bypass the Andaman Islands entirely because you're not going to offload the cargo again in the Andamans. And therefore, it is important to ensure that when we are building the port, we are in sync with what is being built on the Andaman side of the Isthmus of Kra. That's the point I'm making. I'm not suggesting we should not go ahead with our own developmental project. I'm simply suggesting that we need to keep an eye on what is happening on that other project and take steps accordingly to ensure that this doesn't become a white elephant in any sense in the Andaman Islands or the Nicobar Islands, actually.
You think ASEAN would be okay with a project of this kind, which could affect Malacca, going forward?
Well, that's difficult to say. On the face of it, I think the port of Singapore will be a major loser. The port of Malacca and Port Klang in Malaysia could also be significant losers, as well as, of course, Indonesia. On the other hand, ASEAN has begun to function more and more like a cohesive economic union, not so much a political or national security one, but certainly economic. And they may see the advantages, if it is inevitable that the project is going ahead, of financing the project themselves or of maintaining control over the project themselves, in which case they all might stand to financially benefit from two transit points and not just one, between the Northern Indian Ocean and the Western Pacific. It would open new development for them in multiple ways. Because then all these territories become important in terms of manufacturing, in terms of transit, and so on. So I think we should closely follow any debates that is taking place in ASEAN, both official and non-official, and see how that will impact upon our own planning, both in terms of development of our islands, as well as in terms of our national security requirements.
You mentioned that ASEAN is more of an economic union, less political and military. Do you really think, given their heavy dependence on the China trade, they can really take on a position that is neutral or independent of China's own plans for that part of the world?
I don't think they're taking a position. They're simply, I'm suggesting that they might simply feel that if they finance the port and the transit points themselves, the transit artery themselves, they might retain greater control over that transit artery. And I'm sure they have in mind the experience both on the Suez and Panama canals. The British controlled the Suez Canal until 1957, ultimately leading to President Nasser seizing control of that canal. Yeah. And similarly, the Americans dominated and still to some extent dominate the Panama Canal. And that has affected the sovereignty of the Central American republics and Panama in particular. I don't think, therefore, that ASEAN will want to see the foreign control of these ports and the transit artery as something that is desirable to the national security. Now, I'm not suggesting that they will exclude the Chinese or indeed India or the United States from participation in the project. I'm simply suggesting that it might have crossed their minds that it is not wise to allow any one of these countries, particularly China and the United States, to take a majority control of that project. Because then it gives them geostrategic leverages in a way they may not want to see.
Do you see any chance of a project of this kind, assuming it takes off? Do you see it helping the India-China relationship in the long term?
Oh, that's a very broad question, which is very difficult to answer, Surya. What I do think it will lead to, as I mentioned, was a short period of perhaps competition, not in terms of the Bay of Bengal itself, but in terms of the other two major states in the Bay of Bengal, Bangladesh and Myanmar, for whom this bipolar competition might open up new leverages. And therefore, it is important that we work this in or factor this into our own bilateral relationships with Bangladesh and Myanmar.
You don't see us, you see the possibility of us taking part in the building of this project, perhaps contributing money, being a stakeholder of some kind?
I think India should be a stakeholder if it comes to a multilateral or multinational project on the transit artery in the Isthmus of Kra. After all, we are territorially positioned at one end of this isthmus, firstly. Secondly, we are going to be a major beneficiary because the entire east coast of India is now accessible, whereas the Malacca Straits are well south or southeast of India. The Isthmus of Kra opens up right onto eastern India, and therefore there is an economic advantage. Thirdly, there is a national security dimension as well to this, because in the Bay of Bengal, we are the largest state. And therefore, there are multiple reasons why we should look at investing in the Kra project if, in fact, it takes off. I'm not suggesting that we are not looking into this. I have no idea of what government's thinking in the matter is. But if you ask me whether it would be a good idea to invest, I would say definitely it is a good idea.
Last question, sir. Have the Thais already come out with a plan, or is it just a proposal doing the rounds?
I would say it's more than a proposal doing the rounds, because the Prime Minister of Thailand is unlikely to make such public proposals at international summits to foreign heads of state and government unless and until some amount of strategic planning has been done within the Thai government and also a certain amount of political consensus has been built within Thailand. So one has to assume that the Thai cabinet or the Thai government has actually, in a way, signed off on the idea. And the fact that they're proposing a relatively dumbed down version of the Isthmus of Kra Canal by suggesting only a road and rail artery would, I presume, also mean that certain amount of pre-feasibility work has been done on the project. So I would say it has been set in motion. There could be a number of hurdles to it. First, within ASEAN, by countries which might be disadvantaged. Secondly, concerns that China, the United States, or others may have. Thirdly, the geopolitical stability of the region, given the fact that Myanmar at this stage is undergoing some turmoil. So there are many imponderables, and therefore it's tentative. But I think there is enough of an indication now that it has to factor into India's economic and strategic planning. And not to do so would, I think, be unwise now.
Well, we live in interesting times. Ambassador Gokhale, thank you very much for that perspective and insight. Great talking to you, sir.
Nice talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And for those of you who joined us on this conversation, do subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on social media. Thank you very much. Good night.